Hi, I'm James Varney, Saints beat writer for the Times-Picayune, and we are back again for our first regular season edition of the Black and Gold Report at NOLA.com. And I'm joined as always by the other NOLA.com boys, Mike Triplett and Jeff Duncan. All right, well, the Saints had a little bit of an issue with the kicking game in their last preseason game because Garrett Hartley got hurt against the Raiders. It looks like he's going to be out a couple of months maybe. They went with John Casey, who had his problems. Now, Peyton's made a big deal about him. He made that last kick. He made his third, I think it was, what, a 38-yarder that he made, but he missed an extra point, missed a 39-yarder. How much of a problem do you think this might be at Green Bay?
Go ahead. Well, I think Sean Payton's more worried than he's letting on, but I'm not worried. I mean, John Casey.
You're okay, Saints fans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think the coach is taking it as casually as he says, but I'm not worried. I think one thing might happen. I think they might not attempt a 42-yard field goal in a crucial moment in the game when they could go for it on fourth down or punt and pin the Packers back. But John Casey's a pro. I mean, I think maybe there'll be some getting used to, but they're going to have all week in practice. He's a left-footed kicker. He's working with a new snapper, new holder. I don't in any way think that the guy forgot how to make field goals. I mean, he's been doing it for 20-plus years. The only reason that Carolina let him go was because they wanted a stronger leg guy. Ironically, Alinda Mare, the same guy that Sean Payton did that to John Carney 5 years earlier and regretted it. So I think John Casey knows how to make 39-yard field goals. I think he definitely knows how to make extra points. And I think in situations where it's chip shot field goals and extra points, he'll make his, even if it's 15 out of 20, 18 out of 20, whatever the odds say. I mean, I don't think
15 out of 20 is not very good.
No, but I mean, somewhere in that range. There'll be a couple misses, but there always is with kickers. I don't think this guy is going to be like a 50-50 proposition.
The only concern I have with that is, what was John Casey doing in the offseason? Was he thinking retirement and maybe wasn't training like a guy like John Carney always does and is now going through the rust, kind of like your golf swing when you get out there in the spring? That's a concern for me, and I think it's a concern for the Saints, surely, the way he kicked. Because Sean Payton said it was nothing in the snap of the hold. It was basically the kick was pushed. So I'm in a wait-and-see mode. I don't know. These kickers are weird birds sometimes, and it gets mental with them. What's he going to do when he gets out there? And this is a big pressure game. Maybe you lose it quickly. We'll see. But I do think it's a major concern. I thought it was interesting what Sean Payton said. That last kick was important for them all to see, and I think Sean Payton wanted to see it.
Yeah.
And we know how he can have a short leash with these kickers, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I think it's definitely a concern for them, especially if it comes down to a game-winning kick.
Yeah, well, they better hope it's not like rust on the golf swing, because that's news to me that goes away. Mine just seems to stay all year round. But I think you're right that if they get to, say, the 40 or just inside, they're not going to be pulling the trigger real quick on the field goal. They're going to maybe be going for it. But how are they going to keep those drives going so that they get farther, make it easier, try and get touchdowns? We've talked a lot about Mark Ingram being a new weapon. Our special section that we wrote in the Times-Picayune talked about the running game. With now they got Pierre Thomas, Mark Ingram, Darren Sproles, and the Joique Bell who made the team. Do you think that that's what makes the difference? Do you think it's Breeze finally clicking with guys like he did 2 years ago? What's going to be the ticket that gets them on?
I think they've got to run the ball in this game. They brought in Mark Ingram. You mentioned Joique Bell, who I think will get some playing time. And they do not want to get into a passing game against the strength of the Packers' defense is their passing defense. I mean, Sean Payton said this week the best secondary in the NFL. They've got one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. They get just as exotic on third down as Greg Williams does. And the Saints, I think, have some questions right now in their protection. We got a new right tackle over there, and Zach Strief. Mark Ingram hasn't protected at the NFL level. So I think the Saints would be wise to try and keep that high-powered Packers offense off the field and run the ball, and that's what they brought in Mark Ingram to do. I think that's going to be critical in this game.
Throw every down?
Exactly.
That's our guy, yeah. Don't need to run.
Well, but you always believe in running the game, but not forcing it. I think what happens is the Saints need to be able to make the Packers pay if they sit back in coverage, because last year teams sat back in coverage on the Saints. They didn't make them pay, and that's why Drew Brees he was trying to force a lot of things. The beauty of this running game, they're not going to turn into the Carolina Panthers or the Atlanta Falcons of all. But if teams say, we're not going to let you throw deep on us, they need to make them pay. Last year they couldn't. And I think they'll have that balance. It'll be interesting, though, that the Packers are not a sit-back and coverage team. And for years, any team that's tried to blitz Drew Brees, he's killed them. But this team probably blitzes as well or better than any team in the league. And as you wrote about, earlier this week, it's going to be great chess match on both sides of the ball because Greg Williams and Dom Capers are two of the most aggressive attacking defensive coordinators, and Sean Payton and Mike McCarthy are two of the best, most versatile offensive game planners in the league now, and they've all been thinking about this game for months. So I think it's going to be hard to predict what they're going to see, what they're going to do, except for the one thing the Saints have to be able to do is if they're giving them the run, they have to take advantage of it. And I think they will be able to. I don't think it'll be the strength of their team, but I think we've all been impressed by what we saw from Mark Ingram this year, the speed Darren Sproles brings around the edge, and Pierre Thomas is running hard. So they have all their healthy options available. The last time they had just one healthy option available, Pierre Thomas was the star of their win at Atlanta on Monday night in Week 16 last year.
Yeah,
so even last year, they showed that if they trust their personnel, they can do it.
Well, the personnel is going to be kind of interesting, too. Like Mike McCarthy was telling us yesterday, we spent all this time looking at Saints tape with Will Smith and Alex Brown at defensive end. Neither of those guys are going to be in the game. And the Packers got a roster now with 10 rookies. They got a bunch of guys coming back from injured reserve who weren't in the Super Bowl run, like Jamarcus Finley at tight end, Ryan Grant at running back. Those guys should make them better. But the guy that drives them and makes them the best, everybody agrees, is Aaron Rodgers. So real quick here, what do the Saints have to do to contain that Packers offense?
Well, I think they're going to struggle to contain them, frankly. I don't
7-1 at home.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to shut this team down. I think it's one of the worst teams for the Saints matchup-wise in the league because they do exactly what the Saints do. They spread you out. They go with 4 receivers. They use their tight end like the Saints do, where they move him around like a wide receiver. I think they've somehow got to try and make them one-dimensional because the Packers, frankly, have not been a great running team in the past. They have some issues at running back. If they can get them in those down and distance situations on third down, they have a lot better shot at stopping them. And that's why they brought in Brea Franklin and brought in Sean Rodgers to win those first, second down running plays.
But the Packers are happy to sling it all over the field.
They'll sling it everywhere. That's what I mean. I just think it's a very difficult matchup, and I don't think this is going to be a low-scoring game like a lot of people are kind of going counterintuitive.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a shootout, and I saw the total was 47, which seemed very
gosh.
low.
Yeah.
Not that this is
Probably 65.
Yeah, it's probably because it's the first game of the year, I think.
I would think so, but I think there's going to be a lot of touchdowns scored, and I think the Saints are going to have to win a shootout.
Well, I think tackling could be an issue for both teams. I think that's always a little bit of an
Great
issue
point.
early in the season, especially in this abbreviated offseason. I mean,
Saints
we
have
haven't
looked
seen
iffy on that.
Yeah, but that is every preseason too. I mean, I don't think same with John Casey. I don't think the Saints forgot how to tackle.
The Seattle game wasn't preseason.
Right. Well, that's true. But but hopefully, for the Saints defense, that was an anomaly last
Right.
year. But no, I do think that I would have more confidence in a lot of levels of the Saints defense than people might. I think their secondary is going to be pretty good. They were so sporadic throughout the preseason, but they have a healthy Greer, healthy Porter, healthy Malcolm Jenkins, healthy Roman Harper, Patrick Robinson's coming on. That's their top 5 corners, the 5 guys you would expect to play the most in this game, and I think that's pretty good. And they were spectacular during the Super Bowl run. A lot of them were banged up last year. So I think that's pretty good. I think the linebackers are fine. They're not spectacular, but they're okay. And the question is these defensive ends. I think that's an area where the Saints wanted to improve, and Will Smith showed great improvement in the preseason, but they don't have him available. I mean, that might be – you got to get pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and it's something the Packers have given up a lot of sacks in recent years by slinging it all over the field. The Saints have to make him pay for that. That's the one area where I don't know if the Saints are going to be able to measure up. I mean, we expect Turk McBride and Cameron Jordan to probably be the starters, maybe Jeff Charleston and Junior Gillette rotating in, and that's just not a real strong deep core of defensive ends. And I think it'll be on Greg Williams' shoulders to create that pressure more than being able to bring it on every down with just the front 4 pass rushers.
Well, you mentioned tackling, and that's a great point because the Packers lead the league almost every year in yards after catch. They do a lot of short passes and let those really good receivers they have run. And we've seen that's been a problem for the Saints in the secondaries, wrapping up and tackling. All of a sudden, a 10-yard gain becomes a 30 or 40-yard gain. So they've got to tackle. And they've got to. We know Greg Williams' MO is turnovers. They've got to force more turnovers than they have last
Yeah,
last year.
You said people think counterintuitively that the defenses will play better than expected in this game, maybe be low scoring. I think kind of the opposite. These are kind of big play, aggressive defenses. I think a touchdown created by the defense or a short field setup by the defense could come into play definitely for one of these teams. Could be the difference maker in this game.
All right, well, they are going to be looking for difference makers everywhere. And in his commentary this week, Times-Picayune sports columnist John DeShazier asked if the Saints are really ready for what's coming Thursday night.
Are the Saints ready for some football? They better be, because the smart money says the Packers will be amped up about opening the season as defending Super Bowl champs at historic Lambeau Field in Green Bay. And I have to confess, even as a person who annually downplays successes and failures of exhibition season, that it sure would have been nice to see the Saints play run defense a little better than they did in the two warm-ups that mattered against Houston and Oakland. We'll quickly learn if those blips were subterfuge or if they were signs of bigger, more gaping deficiencies, because the Packers are as capable of effectively attacking a weakness as any team in the league. And we'll find out if the Saints can protect their quarterback too, because Green Bay applied pressure like a vice en route to winning the Lombardi Trophy. No, this game won't be a referendum on the rest of the season. A loss won't ruin 2011 any more than a victory would establish the Saints as the Super Bowl favorites. Each game is its own separate drama to be taken individually. The coming out of the gate fast never aggravated a fan base that I know of. It never hardened the media corps or lessened respect. Are the Saints ready for some football? I mean, really, really ready? We'll get an answer Thursday night. For the Black and Gold Report, I'm John DeShazier.
Now a little bit of a curveball for our loyal Black and Gold audience. Last year, we did those predictions. I remember them quite vividly. But this year we're going to go with something different. We're going to ask a trivia question, and hopefully it's something you can't just go look up on Google. It's something that Duncan's going to comb through all of his Saints books and find something they don't know, and he's going to ask the question. And those of you guys that think you know the answers, please send it to saintstrivia@Times-Picayune.com. That's Times-Picayune, all one word, .com. And Jeff, what is the question for our viewing audience this week?
Well, I think this is not going to be Googleable. I think this is going to be
everything's
good
Googleable.
word.
I think it's going to be a question that people are going to have trouble with, and I wanted to make it game specific. And if you remember back in 2006 when the Saints hired Sean Payton, it was a big hiring frenzy around the league. And at the same time, Mike McCarthy got hired in Green Bay. I'm not sure if fans remember back then, but there were 5 candidates they interviewed for the Saints head coaching job. We all know Sean Payton was one of them. He obviously got the job. Who were the other 4 candidates interviewed for that head coaching job with the New Orleans Saints back in 2006? Write in those answers. I think we're going to stump them on this one.
All right, well, if you know those 4, send it again to saintstrivia@Times-Picayune.com. I feel like one of those guys on, Billy Mays or whatever his name was, the great salesman. But Mike and Jeff and I will be back here next week to preview the Saints' first home game against the Chicago Bears. So please join us at NOLA.com next week for that.